I always forget. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I know that people will be joining us in the next couple of minutes, but just to make sure that we are able to cover everything, we wanted to go ahead and get started at the top of the hour. Welcome to the NSF SBIR STTR Project Pitch Workshop. My name is Ann Peterson. I am one of your co-sponsors here with also with the Wyoming SBDC Network and the NMFAST at Arrowhead Center. I'm the program director for the Montana Innovation Partnership, and I want to give everybody a chance to introduce themselves, but we are all part of a FAST collaborative, and FAST stands for Federal and State Technology Partnership Program, and we are all mandated by the SBA through our funding to actually provide technical assistance, outreach, and some financial assistance in some cases to help you, early stage tech founders, to learn about, understand, and compete effectively for America's seed funding. So with that, I wanted to go ahead and give everybody from our team a chance to introduce themselves. And again, welcome for joining, and thank you for joining us. Melissa, how about you and Kathy? Can you introduce yourselves?
Hi there, everyone. My name is Melissa Tennick. I'm a program manager here at New Mexico FAST. We're located down in Las Cruces on NMSU's campus, but we help the whole state of New Mexico. I'm also joined with Kathy, if she wants to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Kathy Foster. I'm an Economic Development Officer with the Arrowhead Center, helping support NMFAST today. Welcome.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kelly Hagler-Cornish. I'm a program manager for the Wyoming SBIR STTR initiative. I'm part of the larger organization, the Wyoming SBDC Network. I'm located at the University of Wyoming on the Laramie campus in Laramie, Wyoming, but I do work with clients across the state. Thanks for joining us, everybody.
Great. Thanks, everyone. And again, I should probably add, I'm based in Bozeman, Montana at Montana State University, but again, I also help anybody from across the state of Montana. So welcome. Today, guys, what we want to do, we are here to talk about NSF. We look forward to talking with many of you individually, if you are based in our states, about your NSF aspirations. But what we want to do today is give you just a little bit of a level set, because many of you have different levels of expertise. You may have already attended many webinars about the SBIR programs. But just in case some of you are not as familiar with them, we'll do a little bit of a level set of SBIR 101. And then we're going to dig into those 4 elements of the NSF project pitch, which is your first step to participating in America's Seed Fund at the National Science Foundation. And then we're going to talk to you about some other next steps that you can take to make sure that you're kicking off most successfully. But I also want to make sure that we all encourage you, submit your questions at any time via chat. We will probably try to just address them as they come up. Kathy and other team members will be monitoring the chat. So again, make sure that you put some of those questions in the chat, but we'll also have some time at the end of the program to answer questions from you as well. So SBIR 101, what is SBIR and who is right for it? And Kelly, I wanted to go ahead and kick it off for you and let you introduce that a little bit. We'll kind of take some turns here. Oh, you need to unmute yourself. We've done that.
Unmute. You'd think I'd learned that by now. We're providing a quick overview here of general aspects of the SBIR and STTR program. For more details, I've posted a link to the tutorials that are available on sbir.gov. So SBIR stands for Small Business Innovation and Research. STTR stands for Small Business Technology Transfer. These are congressionally mandated programs. SBIR was launched in 1982 as part of the Small Business Innovation Development Act, known as America's Seed Fund. STTR was introduced then in 1992 through the reauthorization of the SBIR program. And currently there are $4 billion available in this federal set-aside programs. Of the federal agencies that have extramural budgets greater than $100 million, they set aside 3.2% of their funding just for small businesses to compete under the SBIR program. And those federal agencies with extramural R&D funds greater than billion set aside 0.45% of their money just for STTR. The big difference between SBIR and STTR is that SBIR allows a small business to partner with a federal lab or a nonprofit research institution like a university, and STTR requires that partnership. There are 11 federal agencies that participate in the SBIR, and there are 6 now that participate in STTR. The 6 that do STTR are Department of Defense, Health and Human Services, NASA, NSF, DOE, and USDA was just added the program last year. So what is the purpose of the SBIR and STTR programs, and why does the federal government participate? They're looking to stimulate technological innovation in the private sector. They're looking to strengthen the role of small businesses to help meet the federal research and development needs of the federal government. And they want to increase the private sector commercialization of innovations that have been developed through already funded research at universities and national labs, and to help move whatever is developed through SBIR and STTR to the commercialization stage. They want to increase the number of small businesses that are participating, and they want to foster and encourage socially and economically disadvantaged small businesses and women-owned business concerns in the area of technological innovation and encourage that entrepreneurial spirit. So that's a quick look of the background of the SBIR program. Let's look at why you as a small business would consider, or as a researcher at a university would consider, developing a spin-out company. It's important to consider that SBIR and STTR is a basic and a brilliant tactic to include in your overall funding strategy. You want to think about the federal government as the investor you're pitching to right now. And so it's important that you get to know what the agency wants in advance and what you can get out of it and how it benefits your small business. The great thing about SBIR and STTR funding is it's non-dilutive. That means that you don't have to give up any ownership of your small business to get the funding that either comes as contracts or grants, and you don't have to pay back any of the funding that you get. And it's for translational R&D and prototype development. While you're working through the proposal and developing proposal, and if you do get funded, your work that you do is going to provide clarity to you for your product development plans and initial go-to-market strategies. Whether you're funded or not, you're going to come away with a much clearer path for specific steps to develop, fund, pitch, and launch your product. At SBIR and STTR, if you happen to get funding, it helps de-risk your idea and your technology so that later investors are more willing to make an investment in your small business. And an important thing to also remember is that intellectual property and data right protection is protected for up to 20 years. And we'll be popping a link to the SBIR STTR policy directive in the chat for you so you can read more about that. And one of the other benefits of SBIR and STTR funding is that there's an opportunity for sole source contracting, and that's a direct follow-on of phase 2 awards with no need for further competition. So now that you have that background of why the program was established and why you might want to consider, I'm going to turn it over to Ann to share more details. Thanks, Ann.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. Thanks so much. Yeah, you guys are in a great place. I mean, this is a great thing, program to be considering if you are developing technologies, especially deep technologies. Let's look at who's eligible and what types of innovations. When we talk about innovation, what does that mean? Eligibility requirements for the Small Business Innovation Research and Small Business Technology Transfer programs mean that you have to be a U.S.-based and majority U.S.-owned small business. And for small business, that we are talking about for-profit entities, and that means under 500 employees, including all affiliates. And I would say that for most of us in our western states here of New Mexico, Montana, and Wyoming, the majority of our small businesses are indeed small businesses, but you can see that this is not just for the tiniest. Up to 500 employees is still considered small. And for the purposes of SBIR and STTR, you want to be considering this, the ask for this funding to be primarily for performing research and development. These are not funds to purchase equipment or to hire your sales team to commercialize your technology after it's already been developed. This really is primarily to fund that product development and that initial research and development. When we're thinking about innovation, I'm going to start filtering this again, just from the NSF standpoint. It actually varies a little bit between agencies, but we are looking at innovations, technologies, application services that are addressing real world problems and that you have the potential to have a significant impact. Your innovation can make a difference to a number of people. And might I say, revolutionize an industry, disruptive technologies, we've heard things like that. The technology, you have to have some type of technological innovation. It needs to be research and development based, and you require that funding in order to create these new products. They're looking for technologies that can be scalable. It's based in sound research practices. You have some preliminary research. However, we're not looking at just incremental development or straightforward engineering. There has to be some technical risks to what you're proposing, and some foundational basis for the approach that you're taking. But ultimately, these programs are focused at technologies that may have a commercial potential. So you have to have market pull. You have evidence that your product or service can meet an important unmet need for your customers, potential customers. And if you're successful in securing this type of funding and developing your early stage product, that you can successfully bring that product to market, and it really can set your business up for some significant traction for further investment and sales. And then finally, you may want to understand, well, how are they going to analyze? How are they going to judge my proposal when I submit one? Well, that's really kind of coming under that research area. They are going to be looking at the intellectual merits. So you may have an incredible idea, but you need to make sure that you're articulating a very sound research strategy in your proposal. They want to be convinced again. Remember, we talked about impact. They want to know that if they fund you, it's going to move the needle and that you have the potential benefit to society and to achieve the outcome that that addresses the problem statement that you've identified. And then they're going to be looking at your company and your team. They want to see that your team can actually effectively and competently carry out the proposed project that you're submitting, as well as get that aggressive commercialization if you're successful developing that early stage product. So with all of this is going to be the SBIR and STTR programs are a 3-phase program. Some of you may have heard that term before. And I'm going to filter this from an NSF standpoint. Phase 1 means discovery and feasibility. That's appropriate for all of the agencies. They're looking anywhere from 3 to 12 months. Typically with NSF, your phase 1 project will be a 6-month program, a project, maybe up to 12 months. You can get up to $275,000 to conduct this research. We can talk about budgets at another time, but that will cover your research and development and other costs related to your business operations in order to perform your project. But the goal for your phase 1 is really to confirm that what you propose actually is feasible to do. If you're successful with that, if you've proven feasibility, you can submit a phase 2 proposal. That phase 2 funding is up to $1 million. So that's where you actually get the significant amount of money to get the prototyping, maybe even that minimum viable product completed in approximately 2 years worth of time. That is really that research and development, the product development to carry out the execution that you proved was going to be feasible in your phase 1 project. Many of the agencies, so NSF and others, have different types of additional assistance. The FAST program is an example of a phase 0 assistance. Some of the agencies have different types of phase 0 support. They'll give you some counseling ahead of time and consulting to help you as you're preparing your proposals. Many of them have supplemental phase 2. So if you have successfully completed a phase 2, but there's still a little bit more funding that may be needed, up to one more phase 2 supplement may be available, again, depending on the agency, depending on certain factors. There's also another set of funding that may be requested at different levels. Again, it varies by agencies, which is called technical and business assistance. That is funding that is outside of the SBIR funding mechanism, but it really is to help you with commercialization assistance. Remember, we talked about this before, SBIR funds have to be done for your research and development. Even though the goal is commercialization, the funding that you actually use for the actual SBIR dollars has to be towards that R&D, not for hiring sales reps or things like that. But some of this technical and business assistance funding may be an option for you if you're getting early stage and you'd like some more of that assistance. And then all of them have a lot of much more commercialization assistance programs, and I invite you to always to look into many of those programs. But the third phase, we've talked about phase 3 before, that actually really is not phase 3 or SBIR money at all. The phase 3 really means that's your goal. It means that you have successfully transitioned your technology into the commercial market, or you've transitioned it into a government program. So that's your goal. That money is up to you. But I just wanted to kind of give you an overview of that 3-phase program. And with NSF, there are a number of different portfolio areas to look into. So if you are exploring technology, NSF is the broadest portfolio area. And I have this here. We'll talk a little bit more later, but pretty much almost anything out there from a technology standpoint, NSF is one of the agencies to think about. If it's risky, if it's technically novel, you should be considering NSF. The only limitation that they have from a medical standpoint is that they do not allow clinical trials. If you have a medical device, technology or other biomedical technology, and you know that you are going to be required to look at clinical trials or conduct clinical trials, you may want to consider the National Institutes of Health. But otherwise, you're in a great place here. And with that, what I want to do, let's go ahead. Let's get started. Melissa, I want to let you kick the rest of this off.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Anne. So a lot of non-dilutive funding. How do you get your hands on that? All agencies, they have a little bit of a different process. NSF actually requires small businesses to submit a project pitch before they are invited to submit a full proposal. And we'll talk about the project pitch here on the next slide. Awesome. So what is the purpose of this project pitch? It does a few things from the small business side and for the agency as well. The first thing it does, it confirms that your small business and your proposed project meets all of NSF's program objectives, fits within a topic and subtopic, and that the work plan you're proposing matches their definition of research and development or R&D. You also get feedback and guidance from NSF program staff after you have submitted your project pitch. If it is accepted or if it is not accepted this round, you will receive feedback, and that feedback should be used when you attempt to submit another proposal or when you're actually submitting your full proposal package. Even if your pitch is accepted, you still will get feedback, and that feedback is super important to include when you're writing your full proposal package. The project pitch can be submitted online and can be submitted at any time. So they're accepting project pitches 365, 24/7. You don't submit the project pitch in the same portal that you use for your full proposal package, but it's a separate portal. You can submit one project pitch at a time, and that one project pitch can be the only thing under consideration for that submission window. A good thing with NSF is that they have multiple submission windows during the year. So once one closes, the next one will open and you can submit your project pitch at that time. After you submit a project pitch, you get feedback about 3 to 4 weeks after submission. That feedback will be either an invitation to submit a full proposal, or it will be a rejection. But with that rejection, they will provide comments and feedback on how you can improve your project pitch for the next time that you submit it. If you do receive an invitation with your project pitch, you have 1 year from the date of invitation to submit your full project proposal. And keep in mind, there's multiple submission windows within NSF, and you can submit within any of them, as long as it is within 1 year of the invitation. Okay, and so I've mentioned this already, how the pitch is used to see if your work plan falls underneath the definition of R&D for NSF. R&D can mean a lot of different things depending on which sector you're coming from, but NSF has a pretty detailed definition of it. To start off, any work that it falls under R&D for NSF needs to have systematic planning. So there needs to be method to your work plan. There need to be clear tasks along with clear objectives, deliverables, and milestones that you are going to be achieving through your work. In addition to being systematic, R&D for NSF means intensive study directed towards greater understanding towards certain subjects or fields. It's studies directed specifically towards applying new knowledge to meet a recognized need, or its application of knowledge towards the production of useful materials, devices, and systems or methods, including design, development, and improvement of prototypes and new processes to meet specific requirements. And even though those are the definitions, it is important to keep in mind that the goal and the way that you apply this R&D is to determine the scientific and technical feasibility of a new innovation that you want to take to the market. And the way that I usually look at, oops, sorry, it's a little more on R&D.
Sorry, I'm switching around. There we go. Thank you.
So I would use this definition as a direction of what NSF does not fund. Because there are just so many topics, and then there is that other topic as well that covers basically anything R&D related that falls under NSF's rules. And it's just important to keep in mind that R&D does not mean if we have more human powers or if we put more hours towards this work, we can get this innovation to the marketplace. Or if we get funding, there is no risk, we can go to the marketplace if we get that funding. NSF is not interested in that. NSF is looking for R&D that falls within this criteria, but also R&D that will help a small business jump through and over that initial risk that is associated with bringing a new innovation to the marketplace. And then the pitch component, there's 4 different parts to it. We're going to briefly chat about each part, starting with the technology innovation. So for the technology innovation in your project pitch, make sure that you are under 500 words. And underneath 500 words, describe the technical innovation that would be the focus of the phase 1 project, including a brief discussion of the origins of the innovation, as well as explanation as to why it meets the program's mandate to focus on supporting R&D of unproven high-impact innovations. So in this section, there's a few things to keep in mind and a few objectives. First, you want to make sure you're describing the innovation and its origin. What does your innovation do and what will it look like? When a customer end user goes to buy your innovation and it reaches out into your whatever your marketplace looks like, what are they grabbing off the shelf and how will they be using that product? Next, how is your innovation different from competition? If you say that there is no competition, you don't understand your marketplace, and reviewers will keep that in mind. Every innovation and every product has competition. For some, it can be physical competition as an actual product or service. If you can't find that, think about how are your customers and end users solving the problem without your innovation. That is your competition, the status quo. How is your innovation going to make their life easier and make it life easier compared to the status quo? Then, is there any background research that inspired your innovation? Were you working in the lab with just basic research methods and always having this research be applied in the same way? And did you have like an aha moment where you're thinking, wow, we have this research in our lab, but we can move it and we can commercialize it and make life easier for many Americans? So keep that in mind. Is there research or data that you collected as you were going through that process that really showed this is a strong direction for folks to go in? And then how does it meet the mandate of supporting R&D based on the definition provided in the previous slides? And how does it meet or match with the different topics and subtopics provided? And then as you're writing, make sure to tie your unproven high impact innovation to NSF initiatives. So do some research. Have they funded similar innovations or projects in the past? You can look at topic portfolios or different topic areas within the seed fund page. You can also go to sbir.gov and look at awards that have been issued to NSF. Does your innovation fall within something similar? Also, look, are there different grant opportunities for different kinds of science that they're looking for? Browse their funding opportunities and see if they've published about challenges that your innovation can solve. It is so awesome for them to be, a few months back to publish, hey, we have this large national emergency that we have to focus on and that we have to direct our work towards. What if your innovation actually helps them move that forward? Connect to that initiative, make that connection very clear to them. Also, tie their wording into your pitch or anything that you're writing for them. The reviewers are going to be looking for the 4 sections we talk about today. There is no reason why you shouldn't actually be saying the technology innovation is, or use the words that they are looking for. NSF does half the work for you. It lists what they're looking for. Make sure you're using those words as you're writing. And then finally, ask yourself this: what challenges or risks are preventing you from delivering your innovation to the market right now? If, like we mentioned before, if it's just more hours or more people hours, or, we need a few more customer surveys, we need to go find customers, that is not something that NSF SBIR will fund. That is something that needs to be done beforehand, or there's additional programs that can help you be successful in those areas. NSF is looking to fund high risk, highly innovative ideas that a small business just does not have the R&D funding to go after. So imagine that you have this cool new innovation that you want to go and check, is it feasible? Is it feasible in the real world? NSF wants to give you the funding to jump over that bridge and actually get to go through that R&D testing.
Right, that was it? Okay, great. Thanks, Melissa. So yeah, hey, you guys, we geek out about this because we're so excited about what the NSF has opportunities are there. And as Melissa just discussed, that first section of the project pitch, and I wanted to make sure that I addressed, I saw a couple of things in the chat. Thank you, Kathy, for monitoring that. One of the goals definitely with this presentation today is to help break down your approach to answering these. So they list a nice little paragraph on their website for the project pitch, which we've put in each of these. However, you're like, how do I really answer that? Some of these questions, and we'll send these slides out to you afterwards, are really going to help trigger your conversations so that you can start drafting your content and then streamline that down to 500 words or 250 words, depending on the question section of the project pitch, so that you can really effectively and share with NSF why your technology is risky, why it's important, it's addressing a really important need, and how you are going to approach this. So I get to talk about the technical objectives and challenges section. That's a second part of the project pitch. And that is where you're going to tell the NSF, gosh, okay, this is the problem that we talked about. There's a problem here. We have an approach that we think will work. Here's how we're going to do it. The technical objectives and challenges are really, they're really probably more so your hypotheses, right? And then you're going to articulate some of the ways, the tactics, the tasks in a few points that will help you de-risk that technology for the next phase. So the technical objectives challenges gives you 500 words. Those 500 words, that's approximately one page, single spaced page, folks. Again, you're going to be entering this in the portal on the NSF website. That's where you'll be directed to enter these sections. But some of the key questions when you have these, you have this idea, this innovative idea, but what you need to do is pick the highest risk problems. What are the challenges? What are the things that you don't know yet? You have an approach that you think if it were successful, it could really have some impact. It could change the way people are doing things. It could help health outcomes. It could improve certain ways that we do things now significantly. But what's preventing you from doing this right now, as Melissa talked about? And when it comes to the technology, pick those highest risk things and think about how tackling those tasks, how choosing those, proving those hypotheses will help get you move this forward. So some of the key questions that you want to ask are, what are the objectives that we need to focus, that will be the focus of our approach? How does addressing these objectives, testing out these objectives, how will that establish the feasibility of our solution so that we can go on to that full product development that we'd like to go on to in phase 2? And then identify the key tasks, scientifically sound key tasks. Luckily, when we're talking about NSF, for the most part, we're talking with scientists, people who understand that scientific method, but make sure you go back to that. That's a little bit high school, and I'm not trying to put it down, but it's kind of your high school science class, right? Go back to your scientific method and make sure that you're articulating some very key approaches for how you will de-risk your hypotheses at the technical project. So let's look at that. And you keep talking about these hypotheses. Well, gosh, there's so much to do to build this product. Where do I go? As I mentioned, NSF is looking for technical risk. So your overall project should be technically risky. You should focus on the feasibility for your phase 1 project on those objectives that have the highest technical risk. Remember, you only have about 6 months to perform this work. You might think it's a lot of money, you only have up to $275,000 to perform this work. So make sure that you're taking those most important aspects of your technology development that are the most riskiest. So make those be your primary objectives. Keep those well-defined and short, 2 to 4 at most. These are your specific aims, the things that once you prove that out, if you know that those will work, that they're feasible, and you have alternative options potentially as well. But if you know that those can work, then gosh, we can definitely develop this product as long as we can prove these technical risky objectives out, prove those hypotheses out. Make sure that it's very well reasoned, well organized, and scientifically sound, as I mentioned. Your research really needs to leverage some of your preliminary work or others' fundamental science and research. So you'll be having citations, you will cite things, this is not just brand new, crazy idea. This is, hey, this is new. There's a basis to why I really want to expand and create a product out of this novel research. And you should be thinking about very measurable milestones. How are you going to measure success? And as appropriate, are there some alternative approaches that may be required so you can have a go, no-go decision on feasibility of your approach? Make sure that you're including that by doing this, by proving these 2 to 4 technical objectives, risky objectives, this is going to set us up for success in phase 2. And it also will help us to advance this product to a more commercially viable product. So those are the kind of things when we're talking about that section, when you see this description in the project pitch, kind of think about some of these other questions that will help you answer those this section of your pitch. So with that, Kelly, I'd love for you to talk about the next session.
Thanks, Anne. One thing to keep in mind when you're looking at the market opportunity is NSF is interested in learning about your proposed business model in the project pitch. You need to describe how your small business is going to make money. So it's important that you think about how you can build a business around your technology. And while NSF does not expect you to have all the answers during the pitch phase, they wanted to see that you have a well-developed thought process that'll help you succeed even if you need to pivot later as you're going through your work. So when we look at the market opportunity section, we only get 250 words. So it's important for you to think about how you use those words. It seems like a lot, but it's not really very much. So we have some key questions here that we thought you should take a look at and consider when you're trying to identify your customer profile, because NSF wants to know what are your customers' pain points, what's your customer profile, and what's your near-term commercialization success. And so you can think about, well, what problem are you trying to solve? So that would be your customer's pain point. Who's going to benefit from the product? You want to make sure that you're thinking about, in addition to who's going to use the product, who's going to buy it, because the customer is actually the person who buys it, not necessarily the person who's using it. So why do they need your solution? How many people are affected? How big is this problem? NSF wants to ensure that they're investing in a product innovation that has market pull. All too often, startups fail because they try to sell something that no one wants. So you need to properly position and think about your product or service when you're getting to commercialization and thinking about the marketplace. So you're messaging the right audience, and so you don't end up being one of those startups that fail. So it's important for you to clearly understand the problem and your customer pain points. So when we talk about the market opportunity, the pain points, there are a couple different things that could be causing pain to your customers. Maybe the solution is the approach is too costly, so you need to find a different solution. Maybe the process is too complicated, requires 5 machines to do the work, and you can combine it all and create a new machine that could do the work of 5. Maybe the efficacy is too low and the outcomes are not as good as they could be. So when you're looking at this, the pain point, it's basically what problem does the customer need solved, and it needs to drive a benefit and a value for the potential product. And benefits are things your solution will do for the customer, and values are why they're buying the solution. And we have an example here of a spin out that used federally funded research done at a university to create a successful small business. This is a Montana spin out called Nature's Find. They identified the critical pain point is that people who don't eat meat are looking for non-meat based quality protein. So Nature's Find is the name of the company, and they address the growing demand for plant-based protein that mimics meat and other animal-based products by using a microbe that they found at Yellowstone National Park. So this has a Mountain West kind of appeal to the product development. So that's exciting. They developed a product they call Phi protein. It's a nutritional fungi protein that has 9 essential amino acids. They're growing it through their breakthrough fermentation technology. Their current product categories are meatless breakfast patty and non-dairy cream cheese. And according to the website, the key things that are great about the Phi protein are that it uses 99% land than beef to produce. The technology produces less CO2 and no methane gas, which can have a huge impact on energy conservation. And their food production requires low water use. So it says 99% less water since there's no irrigation. And we'll put a link in the chat so you can learn more about that company. So you can see there about how they've identified a pain point, how they're talking about the customer benefit and value, and bringing their solution to market. So, and they use NSF Sbir funding to do that. So that's exciting news. So let's take a look more about who will benefit, use, and or buy your products. So if you don't really understand the problem, and you can't understand the problem until you clearly identify who you're solving the problem for. So again, as we mentioned earlier, everyone is not your customer. What you need to figure out is who is your ideal first customer. And you can do that by developing a persona and identifying the characteristics of the people who will benefit and buy your product. You can be sure you're going after the easiest customer first. So those are the early adopters who are experiencing the most pain and are the most desperate looking to solve the problem because they're going to be willing to spend money to do so. If you haven't talked to any customers, while it's not required, you could do customer discovery where you go out and talk to potential users to find out their pain points, like how often they have a problem. And you want to make sure that you're trying to solve a problem that occurs frequently and causes a considerable inconvenience. So they want to spend money. You aren't required to do it, but if you have done customer discovery, be sure you mention that in your project pitch. If you haven't talked to customers, you can do a secondary market research. This is going to be a top-down approach where you're going to be looking at perhaps the total addressable market and then narrow down the focus if possible. Let's take a look at a Wyoming-based company. It's out of Laramie, Wyoming. They are wrapping up their NSF Phase 1 award. If you look at their abstract that's published on the NSF award database and you look at their website, you'll find out that Unlocked Labs is developing a patent pending probiotic that's programmed to biodegrade uric acid in the gut. And by eliminating the uric acid in the GI tract, they're hoping to lower it throughout the body and help treat gout. So currently they say there are many over-the-counter supplements that are marketed toward gout, but none of them are backed with scientific evidence. So that's their benefit that they have, that their research is based on scientific evidence. The Unlocked Labs is developing these engineered probiotics. And they've said that specifically there are 92 million gout patients in the US alone. So that's where they've drawn a circle, and they've said these are the total addressable market in the US. We have 9.2 million gout sufferers. But they've also said, and to make it bigger, they've said there are 45 million US Americans with hyperuricemia, which are at risk for gout and urate kidney stones. So they've made the potential market larger. They could have narrowed this market down by talking about that more men than women suffer from gout. They could also have narrowed it down by talking about the age of their consumers and identifying that as part of their persona. But they chose to leave in their project pitch to leave the market as large as possible so that NSF would see that there is a huge need here, and that they have a potential product that can solve a large pain point for customers. So when you're breaking down and thinking about the market opportunity, remember you've got 250 words. You're going to want to make sure you talk about who's going to benefit from the product, who will use it, who will buy it. And then also it's important for you to talk about how large your potential market segments are. And the more research you do now, the stronger your elevator pitch will be. Getting your commercial opportunity section for your full proposal, all that research you can use to put in there. Since we've looked at the market opportunity, let's now take a look at the company and team next.
Thank you, Kelly. But I did want to just pause for a minute. We had some great questions pop up during the portion you just presented. And one I think we could just clarify and touch on a little. It's from Kimberly. She had a question: should the size of the problem be focused solely on the customer or the larger societal impact or problem that the customers are trying to solve? So before we went into team and company, I thought, Kelly, maybe you could address that question real quick for us.
I think on the project pitch, if you can talk about the larger problem, and then if you can narrow it down and focus on our first customer, the segment we would approach is this. That would be a good way to address that issue. One thing I did not mention, and I probably should have, is that if you do receive NSF funding and you haven't done any kind of customer discovery, one of the great things you can do is participate in the NSF bootcamp, where you can go out and do 35 customer interviews, and you can use some of that NSF funding to do that bootcamp customer discovery. Did anyone else have any advice on that question about how to approach the market, if they should narrowly focus it or mention the larger market first, or Anne or
yeah, actually, guys, I'd love to add a little bit. Thanks, Kathy, for bringing it up. Thanks, Kimberly. And again, I thank you everybody for the questions. I know that we're kind of rushing through this, but I think this is because it'll be fun to talk about in a Q&A session, address a lot of the kind of free form questions that are coming in. Kimberly, it's a great question. And also it will be part of your review process, is looking at the broader impacts. They are interested, and on NSF's website, and we'll put this in the chat as well, for the actual proposal, once you are invited after submitting your project pitch, one of the elements of a review are those broader impacts. So that is societal outcomes and things like that. I do want to say, keep in mind, this is intended for small business. They do want to make sure in order for you to achieve those broader impacts, building a product that can sustain a commercial product line and company is important to do that. So don't lose sight of that. But yeah, broader impacts is an important part of this. Some questions have been also about, are there examples? Not really. Not really. It's hard to share those examples per se. You may find them out in, from other people, but we do not have them, certainly from the client confidentiality standpoint. However, some of these breaking down these questions hopefully will help you to articulate your story best. So with that, I don't know. Anything else, Kathy, you wanted to address right now?
No, I think that's great. It touched on the topic we have, and now the questions are coming in about company and team. So it's a great time to dive in.
Perfect.
So if we can advance the slide, then we can really talk about this.
Absolutely, of course. Thank you.
Thank you. So when you're talking about your company and team for the project pitch, you're going to be answering question 4. And this is where you're invited to describe the background and current status of the small business. This is where you're going to want to present your key team members and who will lead the technical project and commercial efforts. Now, the lead is going to be your principal investigator. I love this part of the pitch because it's a small piece. It's only 250 words, but it's very important because this is a big part of the review process as well. And this is really where you can, have your team shine. And it's okay if it's just, the technical and business expert in this project pitch at this time. Before we really dive into all of the requirements of this piece, remember that a phase 1 application is not an exorbitant amount of money. It's a great way to do your feasibility studies, but most of the funding will be spent on salary. So when you're creating your team, always keep in mind how many people will be working on it and if you have the budget to cover that work. So that's something to think about throughout this whole process. When you're presenting your team, you're going to want to also present, basic overview of the organizational makeup of your company. How many employees do you have right now? And if you have any current or projected revenue, that's very strong in a project pitch. Then once you go into, really talking about your principal investigator, make sure and outline any related scientific projects that will strengthen your project pitch and that will really drive home that you are the expert in this proposed area. If you believe that you will also be adding, maybe not employees, but any business advisors or consultants, this is a great time to present that as well. Maybe if you have someone in mind, that's a great way to name them, or if you have an idea, that would also be strong here. Now, we did have a question earlier. Are new companies invited to, submit SBIR? Absolutely. And that is one of the, could we just go back real quick?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, it's this little light bulb moment. So if you are a startup, think big, think ahead. You are going to successfully get this award. And so you'll be phrasing your pitch as if, when we get this award, this is what we will be doing. You may not have that big team right now, but maybe through, use of consultants and other experts, it's going to help you build your team throughout the process. Thank you, Anne. Next slide.
Yes.
So like I said, this is one of the smaller sections of the project pitch. It's only 250 words, but it's one of the things that's going to decide about your company too. You're going to want to show the reviewers that you have established a team of experts or who have had experience in this area. So this is why this is a very important part of not only your pitch, but once you get to your application, this is going to give you a very strong foundation to build that out once you apply for a phase 1. Even though we only have 250 words, it's really a great time to use bullet points or strong language to really show how the team that will be on this application has the background to carry out the work that you're proposing, especially anyone who will be involved in any technical research, basic information, how they relate to the organizational structure, and how many employees you have working. But once again, keep your budget in mind. So remember, the key personnel on this project are going to be at minimum, your principal investigator and any type of business or commercialization expert. And if you look at this chart here, it's showing you how small businesses really are funding with these NSF awards. This information is from 2021, but it shows you that, it is employees, small businesses that are getting funded. It's really about your project, who has the expertise, and how you're going to carry out the feasibility of this. Okay, next slide. So it's always important to lead with your principal investigator's strengths. Now, this may include any type of prior entrepreneurial experience. If they have strong scientific foundation in the project, be sure to list any publications or posters, distill some of that poster information with a non-confidential lens to show reviewers that the principal investigator is rooted and can handle this feasibility work. And then with the team, you're not only highlighting the technical, but you want to show those business strengths too. So be sure to include any type of research. Project management is always key. And don't say we have project management, maybe list out a quick example to prove that to the reviewers there. Certifications always come in handy. Everyone likes those letters after their names, and this can really be something strong in your proposal or your pitch if you have that. And very important, if you do have someone on the team, maybe not necessarily a key personnel member, but someone who can advise you on any type of financial expertise as you move along through your phase 1 application. Other things to keep in mind is, like I said before, if you have consultants in mind, say that they may be involved in it, because not everyone can do everything. We know that. Sometimes you have to outsource some of the work that's being done, and that's fine and expected. So with that, this is going to take some discernment, and pull out your resumes, dust them off, get those action verbs, and really highlight the expertise, because this is a place where you get to show off how you are the expert in this and you have the solution. And it doesn't matter if it's 2 employees or fewer than 500. This is to show that the team you're going to be working with is qualified to do this work. Next slide.
Yeah. No, thank you so much, Kathy. And guys, so again, we're excited about this. There's so many good questions that are coming in, and Kathy and Melissa and Kelly, I think you've been probably looking at that a little bit more. I want to get to those, but before what we're talking about, those 4 sections there's a method to that madness. It is a little bit administrative. So do a good job on your project pitch, write it well, think about your product development, think about your team, think about the market opportunity. Remember, those are things that you're going to be judged on in your full proposal. But really, they're going to be looking right now that, do you align with NSF's portfolio areas and or their research strategies? So get to know the National Science Foundation's SBIR program. Their website is beautiful and lovely, and you can navigate so much and learn about what they funded and how they're going to be assessing your proposals if you pursue that. But for some of the next steps, what you'll want to do is make sure that your company is eligible to participate in the SBIR programs. So form your project, get started before you're ready. Get everything in line, get your tax identification number, your employee identification number from the IRS, form your corporation, your LLC or your C Corp, whatever makes the most sense. If you have not already done so, make sure that you complete the registrations that are required for the agency. NSF, all agencies require that you have a registration complete with sam.gov. That's a system for award management. That is one of a few that you'll need. And there also is the Small Business Innovation Research, sbir.gov. There's registration there. And then for specific agencies, submission portals, you'll need to have those registrations completed as well. These are all outlined on the agency's websites, and on NSF's website is research and in the solicitations that you will be considering preparing a proposal to. So make sure you get those registrations started, and sam.gov can take weeks to do that. So we want to make sure that you know to do that. And then look at those portfolio areas that NSF has. You can drill into each of those portfolio areas and learn about the program director, the portfolio manager. that's a good way to understand, gosh, where are they coming from? Do they have a strong education background, a strong chemistry background here or there? It doesn't help for you to be considering how you're going to be writing to your audience. And right now, your audience, your next step audience is the National Science Foundation program directors. So make sure that you're addressing, you're kind of talking to them as well. And prepare your pitch, get it reviewed, and submit it. You are going to be notified within about 3 weeks whether or not they consider you in line with the type of funding that they may consider funding. So with that, I wanted to let those of you know, so it's a little bit of a tease, sorry if you're not in Montana, New Mexico, or Wyoming, with some exceptions. We are starting a proposal lab on March 23rd. It'll be a small cohort. So for those of you in our states, definitely reach out to us. We have our emails at the end of this. We'd love to have you participate in those cohort if you are actively preparing a proposal. And you have our emails down here. I'm going back and forth everybody here to let people know. There is also, if you go to sbir.gov, so this is a little different one. This is an SBA local assistance finder. I'll give you another one in the chat for sbir.gov so that you can actually find someone who is very similar to Melissa, Kathy, Kelly, and I in your state, because 44 states have FAST programs, states and territories. So there may be someone just like us in your state. And let us know if you're having trouble finding that contact for yourself. But with that, let's go ahead, and we've got a great amount of time to really start asking some more or answering some more specific questions that you have from our team of SBIR experts. So Kelly, Melissa, Kathy, who go first? Where should we ask? What's the top question we should be addressing?
I did see a question here. It says you have to know for sure the right category or portfolio area for the project pitch. And my understanding is that if you have sent it into the wrong portfolio area, it will be, and the program manager gets it, he will say, this isn't a good fit for me, but I think would be a better fit in human computer interaction or whatever. So they will move it. So it'd be best if you could, but if you don't, it's okay. It's not a end game for your project.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think it's important. I'm gonna say, take charge, folks, of your technology development. Get to know, have a pretty good sense. But as Kelly said, if you might have a medical technology, maybe it's LiDAR based. And so like, hey, do I do this photonics area? Or do I do and laser technology? Or do I do med tech? Kind of hard to say. Those are definitely, that's a situation where you might talk to either the program directors or give it your best shot. And they might say, hey, we think that you're going to be better off in this area. But in general, I think most people find a pretty good sense with those portfolio areas, where they should fit. But great question. Great question too, Kelly. Thanks for addressing that in there. Someone asked, do we need to have all of these registrations in place before your project pitch? Absolutely not. You don't even have to have your company formed officially. As Kathy showed in that one of the charts in her session, NSF funds very, very small companies. In fact, I think it is in the high 80% of their phase 1 awardees are first-time applicants and very small companies, less than 5 employees.
And we had a question here, and I was presenting, so I'm kind of I lost track of the chat a little, but this is come up, I know, and it's changed even since they started the project pitch. The question is, if the pitch is not an appropriate, fit, are you allowed to amend and resubmit it? There's definite rules with that. Could you talk about that real quick?
Yeah. So here's a great, so there, if you are, and we can look on the lines officially too with NSF. If your pitch is declined, like an official no, no, you cannot submit it in that window that you have, that you pitched pitched in initially. That's my understanding, but you can revise it. And the next open window, the next submission window, there are 3 submission windows in the year, the calendar year. You can revise it for the next time. Here's what's really great about NSF and really any of the agencies. NSF has this requirement for the project pitch, but you can, once you submit your project pitch, then you can also have a conversation with the program director or the portfolio manager for that area. And he or she can give you feedback, whether you're accepted or not. So if you are given a yes on your project pitch, it's a great time to establish a conversation with your program, the portfolio manager for that area, so that they become familiar with who you are. You can ask some specific questions to them. But also, if you are declined, you can set up at some time to speak with them and talk to them a little bit more about what was it about your proposal, your pitch, that they felt was not appropriate for the research area. And they can give you some feedback too that will help you decide whether or not you should be pursuing NSF, or if there's something that you need to change in your approach or team or understanding of the market space. Does that help answer the question?
Oh yeah, and that's great, because the feedback that's provided with the pitch reply can really help moving forward. There was another question: does the program director review the pitches, or do more reviewers decide for the full phase 1 application?
So for a full phase, go ahead. Does someone else want to answer that question?
No, it's just clarifying, who's reviewing these pitches, and then who's reviewing your full application.
Yeah, great question. And thanks for bringing that to our attention, Kathy. The pitch itself, the primary decision maker is the portfolio manager. They are going to be reviewing the pitch. They want to know whether or not they want to bring that in and submit, have a full proposal review when they receive your proposal. The proposal, a phase 1 and your phase 2 proposals, are reviewed by a panel. The decision maker, the ultimate decision will come down to the portfolio manager for that area, but that at the proposal stage, all of that input from the review panel comes into play with that decision. And that is, again, another plug for making sure that you're getting to know the agency. And again, we gave you sort of a mini SBIR 101 here. When all of us talk about SBIR programs in general, one of the key tactics that you'll want to do is get to know the agency or agencies that you may be considering. And one of the key ways on their things that they provide on their website is their review process. NSF's review process is listed. Let's go ahead. I'm going to look there. When you look at their website, as you can see here, you can get started. You can understand from applicants and for reviewers here, for example, they'll tell you how reviewers are supposed to review your proposal. That's another great way for you to understand what will they be looking for and how should I write to make sure that we're giving them the information that they need.
And this ties into a question we have in the chat. Are you allowed to ask questions, submit questions to the NSF before you send your pitch?
Depends. I'd love other people's experience with this, other of us program managers supporting people like you. It depends. I've heard some portfolio managers are open to talking with you ahead of your pitch. And I've also known some who've said, I don't want to bother talking with you until I've seen your pitch. So in general, I'm going to say, prepare your pitch. Even if a portfolio manager is open to talking to you before they have received your submitted pitch, dang, if this is not a great way for you to prepare and articulate what your innovation is, the technical merits of your innovation, what your ideas about how risky it is and how you're going to address the feasibility issues there, how you can overcome the risk that's there, what your market is, and your team. So that's my 2 cents. Melissa, Kathy, Kelly, yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, if you can also look for opportunities for one-on-one to meet with the program managers. They host outreach events and often schedule one-on-one events. And you will prepare a project pitch or quad chart that talks about your company, your team, and all those things. They do also, have these Ask Me Anything things, don't they? Yeah.
Mhm.
All right, so I'll let you talk about that.
And
No, that's
something
great.
also to keep in mind when you are talking to program managers, it's not a time where you go and you're pitching your innovation to them, where you're kind of droning on and on and on. It should really be a information gathering session for you, where you meet with the program manager, you chat briefly about what their portfolio looks like. Then you see how broad the topics are, and briefly be with this topic. Is something in this field something you would fund? Is something that takes this direction? Is this something you would fund? If not, what directives are you interested in right now? What initiatives is your portfolio going after? So a program manager will remember if you were one of those businesses that took up like an hour of their time and where the program manager wasn't able to get any airspace in. So really make sure that if you are lucky enough to get a meeting with a program manager, to sit and listen and to learn from them, not to talk at them.
Yeah, no, great advice. So guys, I just put in the chat that the page that I have up here on the screen, the events, those office hours, those are opportunities to speak with them ahead of time. But Melissa's point is well taken. And we'll also navigate over to the SBIR tutorials, in which they have a great set of tutorials as well about talking to topic authors. That's a generic term for those program managers or portfolio managers. And you don't want to ask them about the directions that are going to be in the solicitation. You really want to talk about the specifics of what they're interested in and how you can make sure address their research goals for their portfolio area and why yours might align. But also plan on having about a 15 to 20-minute conversation with them. If they give you more time, brilliant. But have just a few different questions outlined and let them talk. You ask the question, and that most of the airtime should be them talking to you to help them explain so that you can gather that information as you're considering it. So great, thank you.
This might be a good opportunity to talk about something that was brought up in the chat with this question. If there's a directive to focus on certain subjects, on renewable energy security, really, I think it's a great time to kind of talk about what you touched on just now. And when you're looking at the directives or what is important within the funding or the solicitation announcement, but also keep in mind that your technology is what you're trying to fund. So maybe talking through that nuance there might be helpful.
Yeah, did you want to talk more about that, Kathy, yourself? I mean, just in terms of the calls and things like that, I'll let you, why don't you address that?
Well, I understand both ways, because of course you always want to put your best foot forward, especially if there's something that you see is really important. But the other thing, and I want to get the teams back up from what I understand about SBIR, is that you are looking to the NSF, this opportunity, this seed fund, to help you get your technology off the ground. And so really, I think it can be advantageous to, pivot here and there. But if you're really if you have an unmet need that has that broader impact, that has commercial potential, that's what you want to focus on. So, I'd love to hear from everyone else, on what you've seen, how that's happened. If you've seen people who had an idea, but then they pivoted too much and it kind of all fell apart. I think it'd be good to hear some of these stories.
Yeah, great. Kelly, do you want to go first? I feel like I'm going first. I think it's really, there's a couple of things to keep in mind. We talk a lot about getting to know your market. This is all, you should do this research, do this background, but they expect you to pivot. They expect you to, as you're conducting. And in fact, when I talked about some of the technical objectives, I talked about alternate approaches. I know there was something in there. you need to be able to address like, gosh, what if I'm doing a machine learning project and my training protocols, my AI protocols, give me a different projected solution than I was anticipating. How are you able to address that need and decide whether or not you can shift to address the important need in your market space, your potential market space? How can you also, they expect that you're going to have some pivots, I guess I'm trying to say, guys. So they're going to be looking at you from technical merit standpoint, but they're also going to be looking at, are you agile enough? Do you have the capabilities to shift appropriately? If something completely falls through at phase one, that's the purpose of phase one. The purpose of phase one is to confirm that it's feasible. If it's not, no harm, no foul. This is a wonderful opportunity for you to understand that without going on to a huge product development. That is anticipated by the SBIR programs. But if you are looking at, if you have some of these things that come up during your experimentation, it will help you to define whether or not there's an alternate approach. Maybe you have to refine your market space a little bit as well. You may be looking at specifically people with diabetes, and you find that your approach is really much more probiotic related and more of a gut health related for people who with Crohn's disease or other things. Crazy ideas, those things have happened. So I don't think that that's a bad thing per se. It just means that you are demonstrating that you're nimble, and those things have happened before. I don't know. Those are that may be one way to address some of those questions.
Yeah, and then just to add to it, like if you look at the definition of NSF's R&D focus, it's a systematic approach.
Yeah.
Part of the systematic approach is like working and seeing what actually works, and if it doesn't, finding out why, and then shifting to figuring out another thing. With NSF especially, they understand how much shifts happen, especially when you've done a little bit of research there. What we do advise against, or what could really kind of affect the way that your business goes forward is if you, for example, and this is not always the case with NSF, NSF is a lot more broad, but if, for example, you're looking at a contracting agency and that contracting agency has a very specific topic and, great payoff if you can deliver, but what is that going to do with the scope that your business is working under? How much are you going to shift? If you're working on medical devices and you have to move away completely from medical devices to fit into this DoD opportunity, ask yourself, is this something you want to do? It could work for your business, but businesses that are successful in NSF are typically businesses that have their project, their innovation, their work, and then they're using NSF as a way to test the feasibility and deliver it to the marketplace. It's less successful for businesses that kind of adjust to every new solicitation that opens.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And Melissa, I'd love to segue that into another question that I saw in the chat too. It's like, hey, a couple of they're blended types of questions. Can we submit to more than one agency? What's the difference between an NSF and a Department of Defense? So that really kind of segues into that, those types of questions. And then I guess that was really it. So, I mean, what do you do if you submit to multiple agencies and they all want to fund you? They both want to fund you, for example. Anybody want to take those type of questions or that range of questions?
Yeah, I mean, that is a really, really cool position to be in, because at that point you can see and who has the larger award amount or more resources for what you consider to be success for phase one. I would go with that agency. One big no, a big X is if you get the same funding for the same scope of work or for the same work from multiple different agencies. Federally and on the state level, that is not okay. Legal ramifications can follow. So it's super important to make sure that if you are applying, for example, multiple, so like for the different agencies, they allow you to submit multiple like letters of intent or different kind of approaches. You can do more than one, but you have to make sure that you aren't proposing the same amount of work for that release. And if you do get funded for the same amount of work or for the same exact work, you have to choose which one you're going to go with. You can't have two active awards for the same work. And
Yeah.
anything that you are applying for, so even if you, do use the same idea and you're applying it to multiple agencies, there is a current and pending award or support form that's part of this package. All of the awards that you apply to, those are pending awards until you hear from them. So that is where you also let them know. Depending on agency, you will also have an opportunity to talk about related R&D or other different directions you're going in. They do allow you the place to talk about that, but the worst thing you can do is lie to the federal government. So just really make sure you're not doing that.
Yeah, it ultimately comes down to the federal government does not want to pay you twice for the same work, right? So yeah, you can accept different awards. You can select which agency you would like to receive their award from, and that comes in the amount. And is that the best government partner for you in the long term as well? And or you may also find that you may be able to shift, or you might have different types of scopes of work for the different agency projects. I have a client from last year who received both USDA and NOAA awards. But the project scopes were significantly different, even though it was still very much in line with the company's vision and product line. So that's going to be, I think we all will agree, don't just go after a topic or a portfolio area or something because you think you can do it. Make sure that you're doing submitting proposals for the work that you want to accomplish for your company. So keep it in line with your vision for your product and your company. It also leads into what we didn't go into deeper dive because we were focused on NSF. There are granting agencies like NSF and National Institutes of Health, which accept these investigator-initiated proposals where they want you to define the scope. It has to be in line with their research objectives. It's not going to be outside of what they fund normally, but they want to hear what your ideas. And if you have a good idea, novel approach, sound research strategy, great company and team, and it has market potential, they let you decide that drive the scope of the work. DoD and National Science Foundation, or excuse me, DoD and NASA, for example, are examples of contracting agencies where they typically will have very specific topics and agendas because their mission is to protect the warfighter, provide materials and research that will help protect our nation and or explore space exploration, protect the space shuttles, etc., and all of those types of things. So they have much more specific topics, and you're going to be much more bound to what they would like to achieve. So you need to make sure that you want to do business and work with those agencies as you're considering this. Don't just follow through because you think that's an interesting science project. Make sure that it's in line with what you're trying to accomplish. Some questions came up too, and we definitely can talk more about this as well. Some questions have come up about whether or not work can be done in the U.S. or outside of the U.S., or if you have members of your team that are not U.S. citizens. Does anybody else want to take that? Kathy or Kelly? Or we can talk about, I've seen that a couple of times here.
This Kelly, I would just share that usually the work has to be done in the U.S. You would have to get a special exception to have work done elsewhere. You can bring in people from outside to do the work in the U.S. There are no rules that say that you have to be a U.S. citizen to work on an SBIR project unless there's some kind of national security concern, and then there may be rules that limit who from which country can work on those projects.
And to just add to that, and this is my advice for any type of funding opportunity you're going after, is always read that solicitation. The rules will be spelled out, and not just read it, but read it several times. I'm a little bit old school where I've printed it out and highlighted before trying to save trees because these solicitations are many pages long, but whatever will help you. And once you have a question like that, you can either pull it up on the PDF, hit Control F type in the word. I mean, anything you could do, because the answers that the questions you have are oftentimes in that solicitation. It's just, trying to find it, because there is a lot of information going through, but it's in there. And then they'll also have frequently asked questions in certain areas, because you're probably not the only one with the questions. So while that probably didn't specifically address what you were asking about, having work in the US, but the solicitation will always present the guidelines, the rules, the requirements.
Yeah. Yeah, and great question. So I did put up here, and so the solicitation is, again, it is listed when you go under the NSF apply. They will guide you through all of the steps, and there is a link to the current solicitation for fiscal year 2023. And that's what I put up here for the phase 1 proposal. Even though you're just doing your project pitch, this is a great thing for you to actually go ahead and read through. These are your instruction guidelines, folks. Even though we're going to do a cohort, for example, we reference this. We just kind of help navigate you through this. So in terms of any of your employee workers, if you definitely need the right kind of employment qualifications for them to work in the US, there are guidelines for the who can be the principal investigator on a project, whether it's SBIR or sttr for NSF. Your principal investigator has to be employed by the company. Typically with sttr and other agencies, the principal investigator can be at the research institution, for example, but not with NSF. Again, part of that is because they are so committed to the success of this, their investment, helping you to launch a successful company and project and product, that they want to ensure that your company has the requisite technical expertise to continue to carry on the development after the funding stops from NSF. Because again, often with deep technologies, this is not going to be enough. You'll learn in the proposal solicitation. They'll ask you to talk a little bit about your financing strategy and your commercialization strategy. You're not required to articulate that right now in your project pitch, but they're going to want to know even more information when you submit your full proposal. So that's what this is, and I'm realizing I'm scrolling through all of that. So learn more about who is qualified to be the principal investigator. And then for other employees, again, just from the standard business practices, you'll have to make sure that they are all legally eligible to be employed. With that, and I've had clients who have had, for example, someone doing cannabis research, great project. They're going off to do some things successfully. They unfortunately weren't. NSF did not accept them. And I don't know about your case. You may have something related to this that may have changed, but a great team, great idea. But because it was cannabis related and research would need to be done outside of the country, in Canada, for example, at the time, they couldn't get funding. They didn't even, they just weren't eligible to receive funding through NSF because of that fact. So there's a lot of different things to be thinking about outside of the country participation. So if you can, I would encourage everybody to make sure you're structuring this to be in the US. And then other nuanced questions, talk to your portfolio manager if you're accepted, if your pitch is accepted, about some of those details.
I know there's a question about someone said they've missed some opportunities because they saw it later after the deadline on LinkedIn. And she asked if we had any recommendations on what sites to follow and where to find all the opportunities. I was wondering if you guys had some tips. I gave her my advice, but I was going to see if anybody else had some tips to share.
I sign up for any newsletter I can get, because that is when you're not only hearing about the solicitation, but news releases, press releases, what they're, even when you hear blurbs about requests for information, that'll give you an idea of what's coming up. That may be, more aligned with some other type of research funding, but EDA is a great one to sign up with. NSF, any type of agency that you're interested in working with, go directly to their website and sign up for their listserv. It's a lot of emails, but that's okay. They have different ways that you can subscribe and control that. But I think that for me has been one of the best ways. But honestly, LinkedIn is a great way to hear about some of these opportunities as well.
Yeah, great point. I definitely, if you are interested in, as for example, National Science Foundation, I've seen some other people mention Department of Defense. If you, and in general, if you Google SBIR agency name, you will find their website. So you don't have to remember, like, what is it called? Google SBIR, DOD, Defense, NSF, NIH, whatever, and you are going to be taken to one of those top solutions will be their primary website. And on each of their websites, they will have an opportunity to sign up for their email list. Go ahead and do that for a while at least, because that way you'll just get pinged with new solicitations, new opportunities that are presented. That'll keep you in mind. Someone else mentioned, I think the sbir.gov has a generic calendar too. That's a great place. I'm going to also put a plug in to them for their beta site. I don't know when they're going to make this public, guys, but if you navigate to that beta site, that's this is what it's going to be looking like a little bit more. So they have a great setup too. They're really improving the flow of information that they're giving to people. And you can also sign up here to learn about their sites. The portfolio, the companies, I'm going to go down here. Sorry, I know I'm scrolling for you guys. Start the process. I think it's here. I wanted to look at the agencies. Agencies post solicitations. Where was it? Find this. There we go. View participating agencies. This is a great way to look at all of the agencies that participate in the SBIR and or STR programs. And then this way you can navigate directly to their sub websites to learn more about their specific programs, because there is the overarching SBIR policy directive, but then as you can see, they all have their own research focuses, their own missions, and they run their programs a little bit differently. So, and I put in the chat the link that cloud go to nsf.gov. Seed Fund NSF is their sign up list for their email newsletters and notifications.
I did see a question that says, is one agency more rigorous than another? I just wonder if everybody would want to throw out a question for an answer for that question.
National Institutes of Health.
Yeah.
And if you think about why they have to be rigorous, it's because of human clinical trials. So that makes sense. And that's where I have a little bit more background in that. So that would be my answer. I have not worked with the DoD, but I would assume anything dealing with national security would be, you'd really have to make sure you have a plan and the rigor is very important. I mean, with all of these, but when you're dealing with human lives, I think that's something that you really have to remember there.
Right. I'd agree with you, Kathy. I think NIH is rigorous. NSF is rigorous in the sense that they're very proud of their bleeding edge, that they're innovative and that they really, the NSF, the SBIR program started out of NSF back in the 80s. It was the initial program. So they do like to see really very strong intellectual merits. They will, really review your proposals very thoroughly. They all will be reviewed very thoroughly, but you may find that at Department of Defense, if you have a specific technology that you've already developed or is in development that can really be transitioned and with some additional research and development to meet a Department of Defense need, they're going to look at that oh gosh, can they deliver? They want to look at, can you deliver? Do they like the technology and do they believe that you can deliver? but they're going to be a potential customer of yours. Really, if you get funded through the Department of Defense, especially at a phase 2, it's kind of yours to lose, to not transition that and have them become a customer of yours in some format. But National Science Foundation will never be a customer of yours. National Institutes of Health will never be a customer of yours. So they really want to make sure that what you're proposing is so very scientifically sound and has intellectual merits. Some of the people we've heard from too is like, do I have to have a PhD? Not necessarily. You don't necessarily have to do that, but probably someone on your team should have a PhD. And the one caveat or the one change that I say, except for NIH, I would say that if your key personnel does not have a PhD, that you do not have PhDs on your key personnel team for a National Institutes of Health, you should go get one, because that really would be a requirement. Maybe to your point, Kathy. Wow.
We're at time, but I wanted to, I know we could go all day. Well,
Oh, that's right. Oh, look at that. Yes.
I know. And I know, I think, Anne, you were the one who mentioned we geek out on this, and it's because we feel so strongly about these funding mechanisms. So we encourage you to, we'll be sending you the slide deck. You have follow-up questions. We've included contact information. If you're not affiliated with one of these states that are here today, look for the FAST programming in your region. And if you're having a little bit of trouble there, reach out to us and we could see if we can do some navigating for you.
That's right. Thanks, everyone. Really appreciate you joining us this afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.